Hey guys, it's Saga from TechWorks. You guys saw the title, you know what this video is about, so let's get started. When I asked you, which video would you guys like to watch next, camera comparison between the Zenfone 5Z and the POCO F1 got second most number of votes, so here it is. In previous videos, we saw how the dual cameras on the POCO F1 are and how it compares with the likes of the Mi A2 and the OnePlus 6. But this comparison with the Asus Zenfone 5Z is particularly interesting. 5Z has an interesting set of cameras. In broad daylight, images from its dual cameras were at par with the OnePlus 6, but its low light performance was so much better it blew the OnePlus 6 out of competition. POCO F1 has also done really well so far in all of our previous videos. So as I said, this comparison is going to be an interesting one. Base variant of the POCO F1 is available at 20,999 rupees, whereas the Zenfone 5Z starts at 29,999 rupees. So there is a 9,000 rupees difference between the price of both these phones. For this price, you get a 12 megapixel primary camera on the Zenfone 5Z with a wide f1.8 aperture and a large individual pixel size of 1.4 micron. It uses face detection for autofocus and gets 4-axis optical image stabilization. Secondary camera has a 8 megapixel sensor with f2.2 aperture and a very wide 12mm lens. Primary camera on the POCO F1 also has a 12 megapixel sensor with f1.9 aperture, and it also has a large individual pixel size of 1.4 micron. It uses dual pixel technology for autofocusing, and none of its cameras have optical stabilization. Its secondary camera has a 5 megapixel sensor with f2.2 aperture, and it is only used for sensing depth information for portrait shots. On the Zenfone 5Z, you can shoot 4K videos in up to 60 fps and 1080p and 720p videos in up to 240 fps. On the POCO F1, you can shoot 4K videos at 30 fps, 1080p at 30, 120 and 240 fps, and 720p videos at 120 and 240 fps. There is an 8 megapixel front-facing camera with f2.2 aperture on the Zenfone 5Z, while the POCO F1 comes with a mammoth 20 megapixel front-facing camera with f2.2 aperture. Both can shoot 1080p 30 fps videos with these cameras. If you want a detailed look at the camera interface, I suggest you guys check out my dedicated camera reviews of both these phones. I will leave card to those videos on the top right corner of the screen and also link them in the description section. Both phones offer manual mode if you want a better control over various settings like ISO, shutter speed, white balance and focus. Now before we move on to the image and video samples, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the amazing videos coming up on this channel. Both phones have a similar megapixel count and sensor size on the primary camera, so the difference we see in these images are the result of internal processing that both these phones apply once the images are captured by the sensor. Images from POCO F1 show a bit more contrast, while the ones from the Zenfone 5Z appear a bit flat. Asus has been pushing out many software updates to improve the camera performance on the 5Z. Few weeks back, when I compared its images with the OnePlus 6, Zenfone was showing a bit oversaturated colors in almost all of its shots. But that issue seems to be fixed and the colors are not as saturated anymore. If you look closer, there are more details in the images from the Zenfone 5Z, while the overall images from the POCO F1 are a bit softer in comparison. But when you only look at the images from the POCO F1, they look really good on their own. Zenfone 5Z tends to capture and represent slightly cooler colors, whereas POCO F1 almost always captures warmer looking color tones. In certain lighting conditions, its images also have a weird greenish yellow tint to them, which doesn't really look good. Coming to the HDR shots, POCO F1 captures a really good dynamic range for a phone of its price. But the HDR processing on the Zenfone 5Z is even better. It is better at bringing up the details in the darker parts while preserving the highlights in any given shot. Both these phones have similar primary sensors and same processor, so the difference in these images is due to the image processing that both the manufacturers choose to apply. On the POCO F1, you cannot use the secondary lens to capture images. But on the Zenfone 5Z, you can use the secondary wide lens to take images like these. This lens lets you capture a unique view of the scene. It is especially helpful when you are in a small space or when you are trying to capture any kind of architecture. The secondary camera has a lower megapixel count, so its images are not as sharp as the ones from the primary lens, especially around the edges. But I still like to have this option And I feel if a smartphone is having dual cameras, then the secondary lens should have some extra functionalities rather than just gathering depth information for portrait shots. Moving on to close-up shots. POCO F1 captures softer subjects while clicking close-up shots. This issue is persistent even after a few software updates. Zenfone on the other hand captures perfectly sharp close-up shots. Both phones have wide aperture, so the background in all of these shots is blurred out nice and evenly. Let us check out portrait mode capabilities of both these phones. Many people actually tell me that how good is the portrait mode of a certain smartphone is one of the most important things that they look out while making their purchase decision. Both these phones are really good at detecting the edges and separating the subject from the background. Portrait mode images from the POCO F1 are almost always slightly brighter of the two, but it also adds a lot of softening to the main subject, just like we saw in its close-up images. So most of the times, I prefer portrait mode images from the Zenfone 5G. It also lets you adjust the amount of blur in the background while you are clicking the image. Just like with the portrait mode images of people, both these phones do an incredible job while capturing portrait mode images of objects as well. They are very accurate at detecting the edges even if you are trying to capture a complex scene. And the blurring algorithm applies a milky smooth blur to the background, making your subject pop out. They do a really good job even in very low lighting situations like these. Like with any other phones out there, both can definitely use some improvements via software updates. But even in their current state, I am really impressed with their portrait mode capabilities. POCO F1 is more impressive of the two considering its price, especially with the portrait shots of objects. Now as the light goes down, we might start seeing some differences between the images from both these phones. First thing that you will notice is the images from the Zenfone 5G are brighter of the two thanks to a slightly wider aperture. It also captures sharper and more detailed images compared to the POCO F1. Although both phones have same amount of megapixels and a similar sensor size, Zenfone has a slightly wider aperture and it also has optical image stabilization. So the shutter remains open for a slightly longer time and the sensor ends up capturing more details on the scene. It is also better at handling the exposure in these situations. In certain images like these, it seems that somehow another light source was added when I was trying to capture the image with 5G. But trust me, that was not the case. We saw similar results on the 5G in lower light when we compared it with the OnePlus 6 a few weeks back. There is a lot of noise in the low light shots from both these phones. But if we zoom in, we see that the images from the Zenfone show so much more detail and are a lot sharper compared to the ones from the POCO F1. The 20 megapixel front facing camera on the POCO F1 takes sharper and detailed selfies compared to the 8 megapixel front facing camera on the Zenfone 5G. POCO also shows a better dynamic range and it is better at handling the exposure in these front facing images. There is nothing wrong with the selfies from the Zenfone, but the ones from POCO F1 are sharper and overall better to look at. Both can take portrait images with the front facing camera, and they are really good at detecting the edges. Images from the POCO F1 show better colors, while the ones from the Zenfone 5G seem a bit washed out. Both the phones do a good job of accurately detecting the edges even if you have multiple people in the shot. Here is a video from the front facing camera of the POCO F1 and the Asus Zenfone 5G. Frame on the Asus Zenfone 5G is a bit cropped in and POCO F1 is showing a bit brighter scene. Both these phones can shoot 4K videos at 30 frames per second. These videos are stabilized on the Zenfone 5G, but the POCO F1 does not offer any kind of stabilization at 4K. 4-axis OIS on the Zenfone 5G sometimes results in weird jello effect while shooting videos. You get electronic stabilization while shooting 1080p videos on both these phones. Again, you can see the jello effect in the video from the Asus Zenfone 5G. We have seen and compared over 55 image and video samples until now. Zenfone captured better details in daylight, showed wider and better dynamic range, and it captured much better images in lower light. POCO F1 was not too far behind in daylight conditions. It applies a bit of softening to most of its images, especially while shooting close-up and portrait shots, but overall, its images are good on its own. In low lighting conditions, it falls behind the Zenfone 5G, but it does make up for it by taking better selfies both in normal and portrait mode. If you are looking for a better overall camera experience, then get the Zenfone 5G. Its wide secondary lens gives you a new perspective of looking at things. It costs extra, but for that, You also get a much better looking phone with premium build materials, better display and an overall polished smartphone experience. But if you can't stretch your budget, or if you want to save some money, you can go with the POCO F1. It has a really good set of cameras, and in most of the cases, you will be happy with the images that you end up capturing. If I was the one making choice between these phones, I would go for the Zenfone 5Z cause I think it offers a better overall package. But that's just me. What are your thoughts about the cameras on both these phones, and which one would you choose? Do let me know in the comments. If you want to purchase any of these phones, I will leave links to them in the description section. That is it for this video guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.